Blood Money, episode 20, with Brandon Joe Williams, and we talk about being a U.S. citizen versus being a state national. For years, I've been hearing theories about what it means to be a U.S. citizen versus what it means to be a state national. The theory goes that in the past, over 100 years ago, we were all state nationals, meaning rather than being a citizen of the United States, we're nationals of a state. For example, a national of California or a national of Florida. The theory further goes that by becoming a state national is the only way to actually have God-given and constitutional rights, where as a citizen you have no such rights and you only have benefits that can be taken away at any time. This sort of thing I've heard about quite a bit, but you're like the first person that kind of did the dummies version of all of this.
Yeah, that's true.
Which honestly, like, you kept my attention. Like, then that's kind of one of the reasons I reached out to you, is because I'm like, wow, how you're doing this whole thing is pretty brilliant. So, I mean, first, tell me, for the viewer, like, to understand, how do you describe what you're teaching right now?
People assume that they can't disconnect from certain things that they don't want to have any part of. And as COVID continues and as the insanity that we see ensues more and more and more, people feel like they have no choice. They have to contribute. They have no choice. They have to comply. They have no choice. There's this illusion that we live in a slavery system, which we do. The illusion of the slavery system is true, but the factual matter of the situation is that it's actually tricking you through this kind of cloud of hazy terms and words and definitions, getting you to voluntarily contract into something. So per the Seventh Amendment and stuff like that, it's actually illegal to have indentured servitude. All the forms that people fill out, they fill it out on their own determinism. They sign under penalty of perjury that they were not under any sort of duress to sign the documentation. It just comes down to the words, terms, and definitions of the words that are just really, really tricky. And what they do is they sort of con people into voluntarily contracting into these various areas. So once you clean up those definitions and stuff like that, they can voluntarily eliminate that contract anytime they want. And even if they take people to court, that's why you can't fight the system, because legally and technically, you are contracted into the system voluntarily, because the way that the law looks at your situation is, well, if you didn't understand the definitions of the words, then why didn't you clear them up in a dictionary?
And these contracts start, and tell me if any of what I'm about to say is incorrect. It starts with your birth certificate, social security number, DMV license. I mean, these are the primary avenues in which you're contracting with them.
There's a whole bunch. There's ones that I don't even know of. I just learned about another one recently where if someone is previously military, they're assumed to be military for the rest of their life unless they file a DD 214 discharge form.
Oh, wow. So basically, sorry, could I break down, like, that? Does that essentially mean that, because military is under admiralty law, is that correct?
Well, yeah, but military is a part of the for-profit federal corporation known as the United States, which means Washington, D.C. So it's a private corporate military. Our military is not a governmental military. It's actually literally a corporate military power. Like the Army and the Marines and the Navy, they're underneath Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. literally is defined under, USC. Let me see here.
I love the way you do this stuff, by the way. It's always like, that's one of the I think things that are most charming about the work that you're putting together is how you always, however long it takes, kind of just dive into it, the research, and show how it, what it all links to,
Yeah. Title 28 of the United States Code, Section 3002 subsection number 5 defines United States as a federal corporation.
Mm-hmm.
So
And
they and then there's actually another section which is UCC. Let's see here.
so in this example you're giving, by the way, so normally the way the process, as you described in your 37 videos, is one where you have to notify the government that, hey, I want to change my status. I never knew I was contracted into all this stuff that, I disagree with, because I'm not an employee of Washington, D.C., and I'm not an employee of the federal government. Essentially, that process is one that you do throughout all the contracts that you have in place.
Yeah, I mean, there are many contracts. There's the driver's license. There's military contracts. There's the marriage license. If you've ever gotten a marriage license,
Yeah.
that one ties you into the state real bad. There's the Social Security. There's the birth certificate. There is the passport. There is tax forms, IRS forms that you're filling out. So these are all the primary points of contract. I just wanted to finish this last thing I was saying, though. UCC 9-307 subsection H states the United States is located in the District of Columbia, verbatim.
Wow.
So it's literally in black and white. The entire United States Code, United States, the definition of the term United States means just the District of Columbia only.
Totally. And as you explained in the videos, for viewers that haven't really watched those videos, all 300 something, 30 million of us are basically employees of that general 10 square mile radius.
Yeah. So before 2020, there was about 45,000 people who had filed their documentation to become nationals, state nationals. Of that 45,000, like 80%, I think, or even more, I think it was like 40,000 of that 45,000 were lawyers.
Wow.
Who were doing it on purpose because they wanted to have the immunity of being a state national so they can cheat the system without having to worry about prosecution.
Wow.
So up until COVID, the whole state national movement was full of either idiots or criminals. So in 2020, that shifted dramatically because people started wondering what the hell's going on and what can I do about it. A lot of people are scared about vaccine mandates and stuff like that. And that's why I think a lot of people are moving into this. Millions and millions of people are moving into this right now. In fact, I think what's going on with the state national movement is why they are hiring all these IRS agents.
You think so? Wow. To prevent people from doing this?
I don't know. Prevent. I don't think they're going to prevent anyone. I've had absolutely no blowback. I've had absolutely no anything, and almost everybody I know hasn't had anything. I mean, we're close to a complete tyranny, but we're not really there. And the thing is, the more I study and the more I learn, the people at the top of the pyramid who've built all of this prison structure that we live in, it's all based on law. So they actually have this tremendous need and desire for all of us to believe in the power of law and want to have law and want to live within the confines of the law, because once they lose that, they lose the entire control system to all of us. So what I think is they're not going to do a whole lot to anyone. Now, if you fill out your paperwork wrong or you do something stupid, they might deny your paperwork and they have to redo it. But beyond that, I really don't think there's going to be like a full-blown tyrannical blowback at all, because if that happened, then people would lose their hope and their focus and their trust in law. And there's way too many guns out there for that to be occurring, and they know it. So I think that is the balance, the checks and balances of the whole thing. And I think even millions and millions of people doing this. I don't know exactly what they're going to do if that is the case with the IRS. But it's not about stopping us. It's about, I don't know. It's about going after people who maybe filed the documentation wrong, going after people who aren't doing this more, trying to cut the slack up from all the people who are exiting the system by going after a lot more people who are in the system. I have a feeling it's kind of more along those lines than it is having anything to do with us exiting the system.
I mean, but that doesn't that just encourage people to get out of the system if they start attacking people that are still in the system?
They're doing a really good job of antagonizing people into wanting to do that right now in every area. So yeah, I mean it matches their behavior. If the way they're going, they're pushing everybody in this direction. So I mean, as far as I can tell, if they keep going the way they're going in the next 10, 15 years, it's going to be pre-1871 America all over again.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I mean, one of the, I guess, going back to the army guy example, because I want to, for the viewer, I want to illustrate what exactly we're talking about, right? So, in the case of that gentleman, you're mentioning, not only does he have to do the DMV and the birth certificate and undo all that and send notices that this is no longer applicable, you're also saying that he has to fill out this extra form to make sure his paperwork is done correct.
Yeah, I don't know a lot about it. I just it was not even in my original course because I found out about it really recently, and I was going to make a video on it eventually. But basically, oh no, I'm sorry. What I said earlier, it was wrong. So it's actually a DD 2168 form,
Mm-hmm.
and then once you file the DD 2168, then you get in return a DD 214 discharge certificate. And
Okay.
that discharge certificate is what you need to be officially outside the system on that contract.
Okay. Now, explain. Everybody knows what it's like to be in the system. Explain to the viewer in the simplest way possible what it means to be outside the system. Once you've sent your notices out and you let all the different parties know that you're no longer bound by these contracts.
So you become what's called a non-citizen national. And so the term U.S. citizen means that you live in and work for the federal government. You live in Washington, D.C., and you work for the federal government. Okay.
Okay.
The word national
And
means,
by the way, sorry to interrupt you, but the reason, again, for the viewer, the reason they've done that is because by creating this almost like fictitious world, they have a lot more control over how we're treated, and that's what we're exiting out of.
you have no human rights. If you're filed as a U.S. citizen, you are basically a legal fiction and you are owned property. The actual word is called a franchise. You are a franchise of United States, which by definition means the District of Columbia. Okay.
Yeah.
So basically what you're doing when you
It's
change
like you're a cart in a mall, basically.
you're literally
Yeah.
like a cardboard box being shipped around. Yeah. So when you change now the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, all the good stuff, the Magna Carta, whatever, none of these things apply to you at all as a U.S. citizen. None of it. Not one word. Has nothing to do with you. Not even it literally, like, that's why you have a lot of reports of people bringing that up in a courtroom, and the judge says, don't bring that up in my courtroom. If you bring it up again, it's contempt of court, right? And the reason why is because these documents really truly have nothing to do with you as a U.S. citizen. When you change your status to a state national, you become a state citizen of your state. Like, for example, I'm no longer a U.S. citizen. I am legally a Californian. So if someone says, are you a U.S. citizen? I say, no, I'm a Californian. Obviously, they get very confused by that. But legally and technically, that is the truth of my situation. Okay.
Well,
so
yeah.
As a Californian, I have the full right of the Constitution. I have the full right to bear arms, carry arms. I don't need an FFL license to purchase a machine gun. I don't need a concealed carry permit to carry a firearm. Will people freak out and like some horrible emotional situation might take place in California if I'm walking around with an AR-15? Yeah, definitely. But legally, I have the full rights of the Constitution, the full rights of the Bill of Rights, full rights of this, full rights of that. There is no mitigation. I don't have privileges. I don't have privileged income. Okay. I have natural rights given to me by God that no man can mitigate or take away from me, right? So as a US citizen, you don't have those rights. As a state, it's called a state citizen / US national. If you're in that category, which means state national, then you regain all of your human rights. And you can't really be ticketed for traffic stops very easily as long as you know your rights. Like, for example, this is an example of a license plate that we just made. So 18 U.S. Code 1545. That one states that anyone who prevents the safe passage of a person who has a passport that's actually a legally issued passport, they can serve up to 10 years in prison.
Wow.
18 USC 241 and 242 has to do with 241 is if one individual fucks around with your rights at all whatsoever, they can serve up to 1 year in prison.
Wow.
242 states that if two or more people fuck with your rights in cahoots, in collaboration, it's called a conspiracy. Every single person, like let's say, for example, there's two police officers that pull you over and they're both mitigating your rights. Both police officers, as per U.S. Code 242, as for 241, actually, 241 is conspiracy. They can serve up to 10 years each in prison.
Wow. Wow. And so let me ask you this. Like, I've heard stories about how, sometimes, and I don't know how true these stories are because they're always coming from third person, but people try the state national thing and get themselves into some trouble. Do you have any thoughts or analysis on that issue?
Yeah, because they learn one or two little things. They don't bother to learn anything else. And then they just get angry and keep repeating the same one thing over and over again. And it's not going to work. You have to have a really, really verbose, complete understanding of everything in the system. And you have to have your paperwork in order. And you have to understand the laws. And you have to understand the legalities of everything. And if you want to have any sort of enforcement, you have to understand how to do liens. You have to understand how to do a lot of things. Otherwise, you can't get enforcement. Otherwise, a lot of people just learn this stuff. They never file any paperwork or anything. They just say I'm a state national or whatever. And but paperwork wise and contract wise, they're still filed as a U.S. citizen. If you
they haven't done the right notices, is that why?
Well, yeah. If you're filling out a W-9 IRS form, you're signing that you're a U.S. citizen. If you have a driver's license, there's one of the questions on the application for the driver's license. Are you a U.S. citizen? You selected yes. You were under no threat or duress when you said yes. No one had a gun to your head telling you to say yes to U.S. citizen. When you signed up for your passport, the passport paper, the DS-11 application form asked you, are you a U.S. citizen? It also asked you, are your parents U.S. citizens? And it also asked you, is your spouse or past spouse U.S. citizen? You said yes to all of those. No one had a gun to your head. The list goes on and on and on and on and on. So then you turn around and you get pulled over and you say, I'm not a U.S. citizen. That's not really how it works. So that means by that same definition, if that's true, you're now guilty of perjury, which is a felony.
Because you lied to the police officer.
You lied to the police officer. You lied to the government. You lied on all these different contracts. So either you're lying or you're a perjurer. Those are your two choices, right? When you go through and clean up all the past points where you did attest that you were a U.S. citizen and you adjust all of that and clean it up, now you're no longer in that category anymore. And now you really are standing as a state national, and there's evidence to it, and no one can really tell you otherwise or call you a perjurer or anything like that.
Okay. Now, I wanted to bring up, because since I got into your classes, the 37 classes that you have out there, I met a gentleman who essentially runs something called the Nevada State Assembly, right?
Yeah.
And they seem to have this process dialed in, because I approached him. I said, hey, I've been learning a lot about this stuff. I actually sent him your website. It's funny, your website, the whole conversation there is always hilarious, because you got to kind of convey why, like, it's called One Stupid Fuck,
I know, it's such a great conversation starter. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I'm like, just, scroll, you'll get his vibe, So Yeah, he was. He said he's got it all dialed in. He showed me like these notices that they send out to, the Secretary of State, National, the State Secretary of State, the Attorney General. What else? IRS. There was a couple of notices, two different offices.
Yeah.
Does that sound like in line with the correct procedure of how this whole thing goes?
There isn't necessarily exactly a correct or incorrect procedure because it all comes down to mindset. The mindset is you guys are over there in your little sandbox. You guys have your own code. You guys
Yeah,
have all your little rules. You guys have your own 10 square mile radius sandbox.
yeah,
You guys have, your own police force. You guys have this, you guys have that. You guys have your own little thing. You're
yeah,
over there and I'm over here and I'm simply letting you know that I'm over here and legally and lawfully we both know that if I tell you something and it's an affidavit, it becomes truth and law unless you want to rebut it. So
mm.
you're not really it's nothing more than an informational communication.
You're just letting them know that,
You're
hey,
just
I
letting them
realized
know.
I'm not in your sandbox. I have nothing to do
That's
with
right.
DC, and I'm here. I want to be kind of a citizen of here, basically.
And that's why people get all pissed off and they get angry and they da, 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 da. It's really simple. It's just whatever you send them, they just file it.
Yeah, yeah,
You sent them all this crazy documentation and you've signed under penalty of perjury 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 15 times that you're a US citizen. All they do is just file it in the fucking file drawer.
okay,
So now you're waking up one day and you're saying, well, wait a second. I didn't know what that term meant, US citizen. Now I do. It's my responsibility to understand law. Yes, I'm being scammed and I understand that. But at the end of the day, whose responsibility is it to actually ask these kinds of questions and clear up the definitions of these terms? It's my responsibility. So I'm officially putting you on notice, letting you know, informing you that this is the situation. I'm this, I'm doing this, I'm living here. I goodbye.
yeah,
It's like
yeah,
you're breaking up. It's a breakup.
yeah, yeah. And I really like the way you phrase it because a lot of, again, what was attractive about how you were explaining all this stuff is it wasn't a confrontational thing, and I think
No.
what I've gotten the sense of hearing these ideas prior to finding your website, it was basically that it's like this kind of like leave me alone, like I'm my own country, I'm my own sovereign thing, and very kind of like not your approach. Your approach seems like it's more about like if you get pulled over, if you're in court, or you have to visit court where you don't have, but to ask questions, to dig through their definitions until basically they come to the conclusion of, let this guy go kind of thing.
Yeah, there's so many ways to it's very similar to martial arts. You know what I mean? You only enter and it's like the art of war. You only enter a battle you can win, know thy enemy. One thing I realized studying the art of war is that think about this. If you knew your enemy well enough,
Mm-hmm.
mechanically and scientifically would there hit a certain point where they would no longer be an enemy anymore? Can you know someone so well that
Yeah.
they're no longer an enemy?
Yeah.
So my whole point is like the art of war. It's sort of like if you know law and you know the courtroom and you know the judge's oath and you know the bailiff's oath and you know the court recorder and you know her background and you know everything under the sun, moon, and fucking stars,
Mm-hmm.
and you walk in there, what are they going
Yeah.
to do?
Yeah. Because you're going to ask them questions about those topics and kind of unravel the fact that it's all BS, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it just comes down to, you know, uh, I mean, technically speaking, once you file all your paperwork and you disconnect fully, you're not even in the jurisdiction of any of these courts. So even if they summoned you, you wouldn't necessarily even have to go. You just send it back, say, there's no jurisdiction here. I'm not going to be coming to this. This is between you guys. And if somehow you're forced into a courtroom, you always have the right to a jury, and then you have a right to be tried by your peers. Your peers are not U.S. citizens.
Mm-hmm.
So you're only going to be tried by people who are state nationals, which they all know about all this shit. So they're
Mm-hmm.
fucked. They're fucked. Any direction they want to hit you, they're fucked, and they know it.
Really?
As long
Wow.
as long as you know,
Mm-hmm.
the information, you're essentially completely immune. I mean, you already have diplomatic immunity being a state national, but when you really start to understand this stuff more and more and more, it gets to a point where, I mean, you could even do almost anything you want, and there's nothing anybody can do about it. And I have
Except for victim crimes, you can't. There
yeah.
can't be something where there's an actual.
Well, that gets a little more complicated too, because I think one of the reasons why, like, you know, all these political criminals are running around and nobody can nail them down is because there's when you put someone in jail, there's a bond that's attached to them, and their body is held on as surety on the bond. But if you can discharge the bond, you can actually discharge the bond at the arraignment. So you can actually like literally do anything you want, and you can discharge the bond at the arraignment to the point where like you can't actually be put in prison except basically for like treason. Because treason is like a public execution, basically. And I believe it's still the same law as it was 100 years ago, right?
Yeah.
That one you're not going to get out of, you know, and that's the one they're trying to pin on Hillary Clinton, and that's the one that a lot of people are trying to use on these people to try to get them nailed down. But it's almost impossible to really nail someone down. And I pretty much guarantee all these political criminals, they're all state nationals.
They're all state nationals. Wow. Crazy. I mean, is there like for you know, you've submitted your notices and all that, but is there any physical affirmation? Like, is the 5-star passport or passport card affirmation that you're a state national, or does such a thing exist?
Yes. There used to be a certificate that they used to give, or you could write to the State Department and they would give you a non-citizen national certificate, which they don't seem to want to do anymore. They said there just wasn't enough people who wanted it. And up until 2020, that's probably true. But nowadays, the only thing I really know of that would be like a full-blown certificate or identification that would show that you have this particular citizenship, nationality would be the proper word. Use this particular nationality, because citizenship is a word that would apply to Washington, D.C. Nationality would be a word that would describe state citizenship, because technically speaking, my nationality is Californian, and I am legally foreign to someone who has the nationality of a New Mexicoian. I don't know what the word would be. A Texan, right? So a Texan is actually considered a different nationality than a Californian legally.
Got it. So, all right. So let me ask you this. What was your journey that brought you to this juncture where you're basically, you know, putting these classes out there?
I took over a landscaping company that I got for free, and there's a governmental organization called the Employment and Development Department, and they showed up on one of my job sites and decided to cook up this like totally bogus massive bill and send it to me. And I had that going on, and I had something else going on with a workers' comp audit, and the company was about ready to go under. And my business partner, his name is Tracy, and he's this like super tattooed dude who used to bench press 500 pounds, and he's a like 3rd-degree black belt in like 3 different types of martial arts, and he's pretty frightening when he wants to be. He was like, dude, we're not giving up on this, because his friend works at the company, my friend works at the company, we have a bunch of other people who work at the company, and he's like, we're not giving up on this. You know, I don't know what we have to do, but we're going to need to figure it out. And that's how I got in touch with someone who I know from one of my jobs that I have. And she runs the California State Assembly, like you were saying, in Nevada, right? She runs the whole thing. And she had been trying to get me to come to her house so she can explain some of this stuff for me for a long time. And I finally said, hey, you know, can I come to your house and can I figure out what this is? Maybe there's some answer here as to how I can handle this whole other situation that I'm involved in. And one thing led to the next, and 3 months later, I'm reading everything I can possibly get my hands on and ordering books by the dozen off of Amazon, and just books everywhere, all over my whole apartment. And watching all the Chris Hauser videos and reading Anna von Reitz and watching David Straight videos and just everything. James C. Lovett. I mean, anything I can get my hands on, I was looking at it, right? And then there was a certain point where I kind of realized that, the average demographic on this whole thing is very much older, right? And I was like, well, shit, maybe I could be the guy to bring in the younger demographic and kind of make it fun and exciting and simplify it and kind of dumb it down, like you said, right? Make it really, really simple and easy to consume. And it was kind of like a position in this whole thing that wasn't filled. There was nobody who filled that particular position in this arena. And I was like, well, shit, it's wide open. It's just sitting there waiting for me. And then I was like, well, fuck it. I could do that. Right. And my favorite public speakers are L. Ron Hubbard, Dan S. Kennedy, and Dan S. Pena. Right. The quantum leap advantage guy. He's like he's like my favorite of favorites. He's like she's so fucking funny. So L. Ron Hubbard is sort of like this very dry, very sarcastic, kind of light, and then you have Dan Kennedy, who's sort of like joking, and he's like kind of antagonistic, but more on like the joking end. And then you have Dan Pena, who's like a full blown like fucking lunatic drill instructor kind of style.
Yeah.
So those three styles sort of I kind of rolled them together into the style that I did the course in, right? Because how many videos have you seen in the course?
All of them.
Oh, you saw all of them. Okay.
Yeah, I watch all of them. Yeah.
So sometimes I'm like really kind of warm, and sometimes I'm like screaming, but it's like all in fun, and
it's all funny. Yeah,
it's all funny, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's sort of like how do you in this world, I don't buy into this whole bullshit thing where it's like you have to do everything in 5 seconds. But if you're gonna do it in 24 hours, which is my course, it's huge. It has to be entertaining. You know what I mean? Yeah. It really, really does. So I wanted.
Have you done anything like that before? Like, was there any performing in your life, or were you just like you took this kind of corruption situation and then, created this whole thing?
I've built free courses before. I've directed them. I've never been the star on the other side of the camera because I build marketing and sales systems for companies. So it was the first time me being the actual star of the show, but like I said, I've listened to public speaking and my favorite public speakers, just L. Ron Hubbard, Dan Kennedy, and Dan Pena. That's not including dozens of other people I've listened to. I mean, just those three alone, I have easily probably 3,000, 3,500 hours I've clocked in listening to public speaking, right? Wow. For literally like 17 years, like solid 17 years, right? So for me, there's about 17 years of studying and figuring out what I like and what I think is good and all that kind of thing that's behind my course. So I make it look maybe pretty easy. But the fact is that, yeah, it's been a pretty long road and studying and practicing. And so, yeah.
And whenever I ran into people that did this sort of thing, I mean, it's changing now, but they usually would charge a lot of money.
Yeah.
To do what you've basically done for free. I mean, what was the thought process there?
The thought process is, I mean, when you really start to understand all this stuff and you really start to break down all the laws and you start to understand how money really works. I mean, I'm working with the U.S. Treasury right now. I hired 2 lawyers, and I'm working with the U.S. Treasury to open up a $500 billion trust where I'm going to be the beneficiary of the trust. Wow. So that's just one of like literally 27 different financial angles that I'm currently working on. I mean, literally billions and billions of dollars, like so much money, literally trillions of dollars. So first off, I mean, for anybody who really, really, really understands all this stuff, you're basically unlocking unlimited money code on GTA 5, essentially. Okay. So I don't really see the point. Like GTA 5, like Grand Theft Auto 5, infinite money. If I have anything to do with it, I don't want a bunch of rednecks on lawnmowers rolling up on Washington, D.C. with their shotguns, which that might happen, but that's not what I want to be a part of. I want to be a part of like, hey, Congress, you get your 10-mile radius, okay? And then I have my local government, which is just my little town, and we have our little local government, And if I don't like something, I'm going to go down to town hall and I'm going to tell them, or we're going to kick them all out. And we navigate our own little. You navigate your 10 square miles. I'll navigate
Yeah.
my 6 square miles. This guy over here, they're going to navigate their 15 square miles. This guy over
Yeah.
here is going to navigate their 2 square miles. It's state based and then city based. So state would become the new federal government of the smaller areas of the state.
Yeah.
And then once you pass over state lines, you're technically basically in another country. It's like Europe.
Yeah, yeah. Which is more in line with the framers of the Constitution. I think the way they saw things,
Exactly.
and I think they saw a lot of this stuff. I mean, I would think that if they knew what was going on right now, they'd be pretty horrified.
Oh God, they'd be absolutely horrified. They'd be rolling over in their grave every day. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I mean, through fraud, they basically enslaved us. And I mean, for people that don't understand the history of how we got here, I mean, there was a certain point in our history where we had certain rights, and then that kind of whittled down, right? You want to kind of give the bullet points on that for anybody that doesn't understand how that happened?
so the last Congress that we had, I believe, was in 1870, and then
Hmm.
the actual original real government was bankrupted, I think, in 1870 or 1871. And
Hmm.
that's when the new government was formed, and it was an incorporated government. It was a corporation, no different than McDonald's.
Hmm.
And that corporation was the birth of Washington, D.C.
Mm.
And then the 14th Amendment was ratified. I don't even know if it was legally ratified, but it was supposedly legally ratified on, when was the 14th passed? 1866. And then it was
Okay.
ratified. So right in that same time period, 1868 is when it was ratified, the 14th Amendment, and then 1871 is when you have the government being bankrupted, and then well, I think the government was actually bankrupted a little bit before that. When was the government bankrupted?
And by the way, is this bad? Are they going bankrupt because of bad management? What's going on there that they went bankrupt?
Well, there's been multiple bankruptcies. There was one in 1933. That's the most popular one that people know about. And
Hmm.
then I believe the one before that was 60, 1860 something. So it was right around that same time period.
Hmm.
Um, so right in like the 1865 to 1871, right in that area, you had a lot of really terrible shit. That's basically when America was very, very seriously crippled.
Hmm.
And it was during the Abraham Lincoln time period. Actually, Abraham Lincoln was responsible for a lot of that, right? Which is hilarious because he's like, it's just like everything else. The whole world's fucking upside down. He's considered this
Hmm.
amazing president who's one of the greatest presidents ever, and in fact, he's actually done probably more harm for America than almost any other president that's ever existed, right?
Well.
So, during that time period was the bankruptcy, the 14th Amendment, and the private incorporation of America. The 14th Amendment is what created two types of citizens. So before the 14th Amendment, you just had a state citizen. That's it. That's all you had, or a national. So
Hmm.
you didn't have citizenship, you had nationality. My nationality is Californian. My
Hmm.
nationality is Floridian. My
Hmm.
nationality is a South Dakotan or
Hmm.
whatever, right? Then the 14th Amendment split that off into two different types of citizenship. You have a 14th Amendment citizen and a state citizen. The 14th Amendment citizen is the fictitious false U.S. citizen
Your
line.
name in upper caps, or
Yeah.
or yeah.
So what they did is they basically used like PR and manipulation and propaganda to start pushing everyone from the state citizen side into the 14th Amendment fictional U.S. citizen side of the equation. And it took them, over 100 years. It took them 120 years or 100 years or 80 years or whatever it was to really kind of push everyone over. And I'm sure at the beginning there was a lot of benefits. I
Mhm.
imagine in my head, like the marketing campaign behind that was like, unemployment, and we'll help you with this, and we'll do other cool things for you. And they enticed people to switch from a state citizen, U.S. national, over to a U.S. citizen, right?
And people actually physically switched. Like there was a physical, actual agreement on paper of
As
some kind.
far as I know, that is basically how it all went down. And then obviously you have like,
And then it's a memory hole at that point because then everybody forgets what existed.
yeah, and then you have the IRS and the Federal Reserve Act in 1911. And then you have the second bankruptcy, which removed all the gold from America in 1933. Then in 1971, that's when the last tiny little leg of the gold standard was removed, and the gold was completely, utterly, it was mostly removed by then, but 1971 is when it was completely and utterly removed entirely, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's just been this very kind of slow uh, breaking down of the whole thing, and this very, very clever, gigantic scam as to how do you get around the Constitution? How do you get around all these things? How do you make people believe that they have rights when they don't actually have any? How do you do all these things? You know,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
so that's the essence of the matrix or the scam or however you want to say it. And really, in my opinion, it really just boils down to mainly two different terms. The first term is the word person, which we went over in the course, right?
Mm-hmm.
The word person could mean anything. It could mean a human being. It could mean a trust. It could mean a corporation. It could mean an investment medium. It could mean literally almost anything. So,
Mm-hmm.
and every single human being has two persons. They have their living person, and then they have their legal person, which is their all caps name, their trust. So people don't realize they're actually living two lives. They're two persons, right?
Mm-hmm.
That definition of the word person was actually changed during that same time period of Lincoln, the
Mm-hmm.
1865, 1871, that whole kind of Fourth Amendment. It was that definition of the word person was changed just before the Fourth Amendment. Okay.
Yeah.
And then the second term that fucked up everything and destroyed the whole country was the term United States or US citizen. These terms, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because everyone believes that the term United States means the Republic of the 50 States of America, which that's not what it means at all
Yeah.
whatsoever.
Yeah.
So those two terms are the two big ultra mega killers that have basically kind of pretty much destroyed this entire country essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And the more people that learn these terms and they wake up to the scam, they're pretty pissed off about it. And that's why my introduction video on the course is the way it is. It's like, yo, don't go out and
Don't
fucking
lose your shit.
yeah, don't lose your shit, right? I'm from Indiana. Trust me, I know. Trust me, I know. You open up the gun safe and you're pulling out guns for your fucking neighbors like this, and it's like, that's not really necessarily. I mean, in Indiana, we've got more guns than fucking
People.
than food. Yeah. Oh well, definitely more than people. No, literally. There's probably like per capita in Indiana, it's probably like 6 guns per person, I'd say.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So and people don't realize, especially here in California, where they're just fucking zonked out of their mind. People don't realize there really is a absolute mind-bogglingly shitload of guns in this country.
Yeah, yeah, totally. For good because that's why nobody will ever attack us. We're
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
strongest army. We were talking about like why you're doing this stuff for free before, but like, is there I know you were explaining that you thought it's good to share this information, but is there a reason you're doing all this stuff for free?
Uh I don't see a whole lot of time left for America.
Yeah. Unless this is kind of part of the wake up call.
Yeah, unless some real shit changes real fast, I don't see this country being around a whole lot longer personally.
Yeah. And you feel as though this is one of the ways to basically reclaim what this country is supposed to be about if we
Yeah.
do this in mass.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I'm not really
Yeah.
a very political. I'm completely outside of the political spectrum, and I prefer to keep it that way. I do have a lot of friends that are mostly right leaning, obviously, but really, I try to keep myself completely out of the political spectrum entirely. I don't even want to hear about it.
Mhm.
Again, that's their fucking world. It's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
my world. They want to pretend, and they want my tacit agreement that it's my world. It isn't my world. It's not my world at all. It's nothing. Their little world is thousands of miles away from me in a legally separate country.
Mm-hmm.
I live in an actual country. I live in an actual original landmass of the Republic of the United States of America. They live in a federal corporation, which is private land that's owned. That's technically not even part of the United States of America at all. It's technically like a bubble, a void, almost like a cyst on the land of the United States of America. Their codes, their statutes have absolutely nothing to do with me. Everything that they pass, everything that they talk about, everything that they argue about has nothing to do with me. I didn't vote them in. I'm not going to vote them in. They're not taking any of my money. I don't pay them. I have nothing to do with them. No different than if I was concerned about the French government. It's the same idea. I'm not over here watching French news because I want to know what's going on with the French government. In America, it's exactly the same situation. So I don't involve myself at all. I think it's just all noise. And I mean, it's basically for entertainment purposes only in my world.
Now, the part that I don't think you go into much detail is the trust process.
Yeah. So to open up a trust, all you have to do is just get some documentation, and then you just get it notarized, and you actually bring the trust into existence through the power of an affidavit, which means basically all you do is just get it notarized. It's a piece of it. You don't send it in, you don't get it approved, it doesn't go anywhere, because the reason why is because it wasn't created by government, it was created by God, and government does not have the option to view it, to approve it, to disapprove it. All they can do is file it, and they can only file it if you command them to file it. And basically how that works is it works through a county recorder's office. You don't have to fucking record it if you don't want to. They have nothing to do with it. You're creating it. It's you and God, and that's it. If you want other people to know about it, send it to the county recorder, and then they just file it, and that's it. And then now you can get certified copies from the county recorder if you want to. But it has nothing to do with an approval process. You're not asking for permission. That's like an adult asking the child for permission to go to the store.
Got it. Okay.
So that's where people get kind of slipped out. They're like, oh, where do I go for, because they're so indoctrinated in the slave mentality of going to Big Brother to ask for permission to live and eat. But when you break that idea and that mentality, you're creating the trust all on your own from the power of basically God himself. Because trust comes from the Bible. It comes from biblical sections in the Bible, right? So you create this document and you go and get it notarized, and then you can just take that document, get it notarized, get some of your buddies together, and you open up a trust, and there's a document, and then you just go into the bank, and you first go onto the IRS website, and you would request an EIN number, because you have to have an EIN number to open up a bank account. You just create this trust out of fucking thin air. You get an EIN number from the IRS online. It's very, very easy. You take the trust paperwork that you just created out of thin air, and you take the IRS EIN number that you just got. You go into the bank, open up a bank account. Boom. You open up a private, irrevocable trust.
So are you going to make a tape on that? Because that would, after watching all your tapes, that was the only part there I was like, well, who should I? Because I know there's different ways and theories. Anna von Rice and David, what's his name, Straight, I think. I mean, So how do you guide people with that as far as what they do once they've done all their notices and go into the trust process?
The trust process is a little more advanced. I didn't really get into all the advanced stuff. I intend on doing a advanced course at some point in time where we're going to start getting into there's a lot of things I didn't go over in the first course. I didn't go over how to copyright your all caps name. I didn't go into how to go through a name change process. I didn't go into how to negotiate with the U.S. Treasury to open up trust accounts where you're the beneficiary, which you can legally do. I didn't go into trusts and opening trusts and how to operate under trusts. I didn't go into private membership associations very much, just a tiny bit. One of the reasons why I didn't go into this stuff too much is because I'm in the process of mastering these more advanced areas myself. So I just didn't feel comfortable going into it too much until I knew more about it. Everything in the course I know all about. But that was sort of like the ceiling of everything that I knew at that point in time, right? And then at some point, I'll either probably add more videos to the course, or I'll start working on a second course at some point in the future. That's going to have all of the more advanced type stuff, and we're going to start getting into a lot of affidavits and getting into all sorts of stuff. So but I didn't want to go too much on the first course. I wanted to push it as far as I thought I could without it overwhelming the audience too much.